comes from the Gospel of Matthew. This is Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. Jesus said, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight, there was a shout, 'Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him.' Then all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise replied, 'No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves.' And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other bridesmaids came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he replied, 'Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.'" This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
There's a story about a little girl who was in a worship service kind of like this, a service where the pastor was talking about Jesus' return. And after thinking long and hard about this, she goes to another authority. She talks to her mom. She says, "Mommy, is Jesus really coming?" And her mom says, "Yes, we believe Jesus is." "Could Jesus come back today?" Her mom says, "Yes, we believe that could be today." "Mommy, could Jesus come back right now?" "Yes, that could happen," her mom said. Then finally the little girl asks, "Mommy, could you comb my hair?" Yes, Jesus' parable is about his return in glory and about how we must be prepared for that day. But there are a couple of things that make this parable a little hard for us to relate to nowadays. First of all, wedding traditions have changed so much in 2,000 years. Now we expect bridesmaids, and in fact the entire bridal party, to lead the bride in a procession to meet the groom. But back in ancient Palestine, the bridesmaids would meet the groom and then lead him into the wedding banquet where he would meet his bride. And there's one other archaic part of this ancient story, which is the oil lamps that Jesus says the bridesmaids are using. If you want to picture what one looks like, it really is just a version of Aladdin's lamp, but more normally made out of clay. It's just a small bowl with a tight opening in one end for the wick. And you fill the bowl with flammable oil and then stick a wick into the opening and light it. And the wick burns just as long as there is oil in the lamp. But when the oil burns away, the lamp goes out. We'll talk more about those lamps later on. Now, in describing the situation, Jesus is giving us one example of something that is expected to happen, but we don't know when it's going to happen. Yes, it's a wedding, so of course the groom is going to be there, but in ancient Palestine, the groom was often just as dressed up as the bride was. So it might take some time for him to get his clothing and his jewelry ready. The groom is coming, that is expected. We just don't know when that's going to happen. And the Bible gives us a lot of other examples of that sort of situation where something is expected. We just don't know when. Just one chapter before this, Jesus had compared his return to a homeowner who left home, leaving his servants in charge of the house. Jesus talked about how important it was for those servants to keep on doing their jobs, taking care of the master's home and treating each other well. Why? Because at some point their master is expected to return home, but none of them know when that's going to happen. But when their master returns, they do want to be doing their jobs and being shown to be good servants. What they don't want to be is drunk and beating each other up. And then in our reading from 1 Thessalonians, the Apostle Paul gives a couple of other examples. The first comes from Jesus himself, who was the first one who said that the day of his return would come like what? Like a thief in the night. Maybe not something a homeowner should expect, but definitely something that they would like to be prepared for. And then Paul gives us the example that is not only more feminine, but also more joyful. Paul said the Lord's return will be like labor pains for a pregnant woman. Yes, something that pregnant women expect to happen, but something which could come at any time. These are things we can't set our alarm clock for. We can't write them down in our calendars to remind us of that time on that date. All we can do is know that they are coming and try to be prepared for it. So when someone is expecting Jesus to return, when they're prepared for it, they just don't know exactly when that might happen. What could that look like? John F. Kennedy gave a great example when he told a story about another American leader named Colonel Davenport. Colonel Davenport was the Speaker for the House of Representatives for the state of Connecticut. And one day when the House was in session, a storm came up. Not just any storm, but a storm that seemed to block out the sun, with winds that threatened to blow down the house that they were in. This wasn't just a storm. Some of the delegates began to believe this was the storm. Some of them even got so frightened that they called for adjournment so that they could come home, thinking that they would need to be with their wives and children in case this was the day that Jesus returned. And this was Colonel Davenport's reply. He said, the day of judgment is either approaching or it is not. If it is not, then there is no cause for adjournment. If it is, I choose to be found doing my duty. Colonel Davenport chose to be prepared like the servants in Jesus' other parable. That if his master truly was returning, Colonel Davenport wanted to be found fulfilling his oath of office before God. In fact, there's only one thing that Colonel Davenport called for, one other preparation that he made, whether Jesus was returning that day or not. He called for candles to be lit so that they could continue their work. Let's talk more about those oil lamps that feature so prominently in Jesus' parable. Those oil lamps have been used for so many thousands of years that even to this day, they are still serving as a symbol of enlightenment. If you look at the seals of various colleges or universities, they will feature an oil lamp, even for institutions of learning that were founded long after the advent of electric light bulbs. Those oil lamps are still standing for enlightenment. Jesus said that the bridesmaids who had extra oil and could keep their lamps lit, they were the wise ones. Because to Jesus, wisdom leads to enlightenment, enlightenment leads to preparation, and preparation leads to salvation. Preparation leads to not being left outside when the doors are shut. And Paul seems to agree. He tells the Christians in Thessalonica this in verses 4 and 5. He says, you, beloved, are not in darkness, but for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are all children of light and children of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness. And to Paul, that enlightenment that they have, that knowledge that, yes, the day of the Lord is coming, that enlightenment to him is all the preparation they need. Paul doesn't nag them about all the other things they could be doing to prepare themselves. He doesn't tell them how many acts of charity they have to do, or how often they should be in church, or how much money they should be donating to his ministry. Paul is absolutely confident that the Thessalonians have everything they need simply because they know that day is coming. They have that wisdom, and to Paul, that wisdom equals enlightenment, enlightenment equals preparation, and that preparation equals salvation. However, there is one part of Jesus' parable that sort of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. If you go to verses 8 through 9. The foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise replied, no, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves. Well, that doesn't seem very nice. The wise bridesmaids, the ones with the extra oil, they seem to be acting kind of selfish. And that doesn't seem to represent what we've expected from Jesus, to see symbols of the grace of God. But the thing is, friends, God has shown grace and mercy throughout the lives of millions of people every day. Millions of people sleep in hotel rooms every night, and thanks to the Gideons, they have a Bible right next to them while they're asleep. How many people pass by this church on the sidewalk or on the street every day? How many people see our lights inviting people to our front door? How many people hear our bells chiming every hour? God's grace is crying out all around the world every day, inviting people to gain that wisdom about Jesus Christ, about his life, his death, his resurrection, and yes, his eventual return. God's grace cries out to people to receive that enlightenment, and yes, in that way, to be prepared. But the hard truth of Jesus' parable is that on that day of the Lord, when Jesus returns, time's up. When those labor pains start, something is coming, and nothing is going to keep it from coming. When the master returns home, there will be no more time to rush around doing what work we knew we should have been doing all along. And when the bridegroom comes, it will be time for the wise and the enlightened, for those who are prepared for that time, to proceed into the wedding banquet. And others, all they'll be able to do is watch those doors shut. Friends, this parable, yes, it's about our salvation. But it's not just about our salvation. Friends, if you are here, I hope that you have that wisdom. Even if today may be the very first time you've ever heard this story, by the grace of God, that means that now you are enlightened. You know that day is coming. And so Jesus and Paul, they agree that this wisdom, this enlightenment, is all the preparation we need for that day. This story for us isn't just about our salvation. It's about something else. It's about evangelism. This story is there to make us think, who do we know who hasn't received that wisdom? Who do we know who needs this enlightenment? Are we thinking of family members or friends? Are we thinking of co-workers or neighbors? Are we thinking of the hundreds of people who walk by our church every day, people who live in apartment buildings just a few blocks from this church? You see, on the night of the wedding banquet, those bridesmaids had plenty of time to share their wisdom, to share their oil, to make sure that everyone had all that they needed so that their lamps worked, so that all of them had that enlightenment. But when the bridegroom came, time's up. Any chance they had for grace or mercy to share what they had, that time was over. Yes, we as Christians have the wisdom and the enlightenment that we need. We are prepared to receive the salvation of Jesus Christ. But this parable should still give us that sense of urgency, of time running out, not just for us, but for others. Have we done everything we can to take that wisdom that prepares us, that enlightenment that saves us, and share it with others? Have we shared the gospel of Jesus Christ with them? Have we told them what God has done for us through his life and death and resurrection? Have we shown that to them in our words of kindness, in our acts of compassion? Have we invited them to join us here for worship on Sunday morning or for a meal on Wednesday night? Have we taken the love and grace of Jesus Christ and shared it with everyone we could? Not soon, not tomorrow, not later on when we have more time, because that time might not come. Have we shared it with them now? Friends, the fact that we are here this morning shows that we have the wisdom of the bridesmaids. But it also calls us to share that wisdom while we can. We are the ones whose lives should be shining with enlightenment, like a lamp in the night. But are we sharing that enlightenment with the people around us, people who may still be struggling in the darkness? Friends, when the Master returns home, when the labor pains begin, when the bridegroom arrives, we will be prepared. But we can help others be prepared for that day as well. So when that day comes, we'll know that we have done all that we can so that everyone around us can have that same preparation for the arrival of the bridegroom. We'll know that because of the love and grace of Jesus Christ, that love and grace that we've shown for others, that will be a joyful day for us and for them. We'll know that more and more people will be joining us at that glorious wedding banquet. Let God's people also. Amen.
Amen.
Friends, will you please rise and join together in our affirmation of faith?